News in brief. Syrian government forces have recaptured around 50% of the western town of al-Qusayr. They're now in control of major government buildings in the city. Fierce clashes are still underway between army troops and foreign-backed insurgents. An international aid organisation warns that hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees are facing health-related risks as summer draws closer. The UK-based Oxfam aid organisation says increased cases of diarrhoea and skin infections have already been recorded among Syrian refugees.
Here is al-Qusayr, the most important supply station for foreign-backed insurgents and one of their last strongholds in western Syria. And now, the town becomes a turning point in the government's fight against insurgents in the country. The Syrian army's operation in central Syria has reached its final destination in al-Qusayr. The army gave a final warning to the militants to allow the remaining of the 40,000 civilian population a safe passage out of the town before starting its operation inside al-Qusayr. Some of the insurgents seized the opportunity and surrendered themselves to the army, and for those who wanted to go on fighting, the military operation started.
We managed to enter the city from several directions. We encountered heavy resistance, but we overpowered them and seized control of these places, and we will pursue them and eliminate them wherever they go.
The military units advanced from 4 different directions, tightening the siege on the militants inside. The closer the Syrian troops are to the city center, the stronger the clashes become.
We are at the southern side of al-Qusayr. We are engaging terrorists in the city after clearing its southern and western countryside, and we are moving on in the city to liberate it completely. We seized key buildings and they are fleeing towards the northern part of the city.
More than 50% of the town is now under Syrian army's control, including its key buildings, the municipality building, the church, the cultural center, a military security post, a cell phone service station, and other important buildings. We are with the Syrian army right now as they are preparing to enter the second phase of their operation in al-Qusayr city. The major challenge right now is the snipers, as you can hear. The army is dealing with them, but the situation is very difficult and the battles are very intense. This was Alaa Ebrahim reporting for PressTV, al-Qusayr city.
Well, the battle is still very intense today. It's less intense than it was yesterday, but it's still very intense. One fact remains common between yesterday and today is that the snipers are making the advancement of the Syrian army very difficult, and the Syrian army has to deal with every sniper using tanks at certain areas, using armored vehicles in other incidents, and using special forces in other times. Today we went with the Syrian army to the schools complex, which is almost in the center, in the middle of al-Qusayr, which the Syrian army entered from the eastern part of al-Qusayr. The eastern part of al-Qusayr is now completely under Syrian army's control. And as I told you, we entered with the Syrian army to the schools complex bordering the eastern part. The Syrian army has moved the front line to be at this schools complex. The schools complex was used in parts as a command center for the insurgents, but the Syrian army now regained control over the schools complex completely, and this is the front line for this battle. As you'll see that in the footage that we will send later on today, it is a very, very, very intense fight in here, but the Syrian army is advancing steadily, not very quickly, but steadily actually.
So, Alaa, could you also quickly tell us whether there are any civilians right now living in Qusayr and how they've been affected?
Well, obviously, the Syrian army gave a period of time to allow civilians a safe passage out of the city, and it expired before the military operation started on the city at dawn yesterday. Some reports have indicated that there are still civilians inside, and this is, we think, why the Syrian army is hesitating from using intensive air raids against the insurgents, fortifying themselves inside. We could only count 2 air raids today, and judging from the intensity of the battle and the Syrian army reluctance to use air raids, we can say that there are still civilians inside, and maybe this is the reason why the Syrian army is refusing to use a greater firepower against the insurgents inside the city.
Okay, Alaa Ebrahim, our correspondent, with us there on the line from al-Qusayr, where he is telling us the battle between the two sides is still underway. London has admitted that British citizens are fighting against government forces in Syria.
The conflict is therefore creating opportunities for extremist groups. Syria is now the #1 destination for jihadists anywhere in the world today, including approximately 70 to 100 individuals connected with the United Kingdom. It is also endangering regional peace and security.
William Hague says no option is off the table when it comes to the current crisis in Syria. He also demanded the EU ease its arms embargo on Syria in order to supply weapons to the so-called moderate insurgents. He says this will put more pressure on the Syrian leadership to make concessions at the upcoming talks. Hague also confirmed that London has increased financial aid to the Syrian opposition to the tune of £20 million this year. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says all external and internal Syrian opposition forces should attend the meeting without any preconditions. Lavrov says the Syrian government has responded positively to the idea of negotiations.